What is up, guys? Welcome to day 2 of the Orillas de Mar International Chess Tournament here in Tenerife. My name is Titus Stromavicius. I'm a Grandmaster, and I wanted to share my experiences and my games from day 2. So today I got paired up against a Grandmaster already in round 2 against Golubka Petro from Ukraine. I was still higher rated than my opponent by 170 points or so. He and I both won our round 1 game, so we're both on 1 out of 1. There was a little bit of a issue yesterday with the pairings where they only got posted a little bit after midnight because one of the arbiters forgot to press one of the buttons to submit the pairings online. So there was very limited time to prepare, knowing that there were 2 rounds today played, and the morning round was at 10 a.m. But I did still manage to get some preparation in, and I was expecting my opponent to start with e4, as he has been doing in recent tournaments and online as well. And he did start with e4, and I decided that I should play my main repertoire, no surprises needed, c5, and now he's recently been playing b3 on move 2. And I don't think I've ever encountered this in an over-the-board event prior to this game. So I wasn't really sure what kind of positions we were headed to. I did see some of his games where his opponents played, I believe, g6, bishop b2 and knight f6. And there were some relatively weird setups with queen f3, knight b4. And I didn't really have any information on this. So I decided to play something a little bit more standard. And decided just to go for a knight c6 setup with bishop b2 and e5, just to try and lock this bishop immediately and limit its scope. And I briefly checked some bishop c4 move. I think it's one of the main ones. And I think I saw some of his online games where he played like this. And I was ready to go for knight f6, knight c3, knight e4, d5, winning back the piece, and then he can play either bishop d3 or bishop b5 with a relatively balanced game. Instead, he kind of already surprises me with bishop b5, and I believe I checked that if he does play bishop b5, I should respond with knight d4, and he basically blitzes out a4. After checking the game, I couldn't find a single player that played a4 prior to this game. And it came as a surprise, and I immediately started thinking, and I thought for maybe 10 to 15 minutes here already, because I wasn't sure what to do. Basically, what I was considering was whether or not I should develop my queen to g5. In the game, I decided that eventually I did develop it to g5, but after checking with the computer, a much more sort of standard approach was preferred here with a6. a6, bishop c4 is basically forced, and after knight f6, we go for the exact same idea that I already checked, but with the knight on d4 and a6, a4 included, which turns out it favors me, and computer gives some line that goes like this, which is, looks a little bit fancy, but in the end, I basically get 2 bishops against a bishop and a knight. And I would think black is slightly preferred and slightly better. So this was basically the first chance that I had already to sort of seize the initiative and seize a slight advantage right out of the opening on move 5, actually, as black, which would have been really good. Unfortunately, I decided to go with queen g5, and the game shifts towards a different direction. He has to respond with, to the threat of queen takes g2, so he goes g3. And then I proceed with standard development, knight f6. I was expecting here knight c3, but he plays d3, which makes actually a slight difference, which we'll see in the game. I think knight c3 was much more standard and much more natural, just to get more pieces into the game and have a tighter control of the center squares. Instead, he goes d3, kind of delays the development. And here I had a nice opportunity after I played a6, bishop c4. I was briefly considering this, but I wasn't sure who the complications favored was it me or was it my opponent? But I was considering this move briefly, d5, with the idea of quick development to with the bishop on g4 against these weakened light squares. And but it did require seeing sort of this a little bit non-standard queen maneuver, because the queen is kind of stuck here, you know, with the expansion. It's locked basically ahead of its forces, and you know, it can get chased away a little bit. But apparently it's not a big deal, and I can actually play queen h6 here. And after bishop c1, I can even play bishop g4, which kind of, you know, a counterattack towards his queen. And then one line could go like, you know, his bishop is still hanging, which is very important. One line could go, you know, like maybe like f3, knight f3, knight f3, bishop f3. I believe, was it bishop takes h6, bishop d1, and I think maybe just king d1, yeah, something like that. And then I will capture one of his bishops with, again, a preferred position for me because I'm a pawn up after I, let's say, capture on c4. So it did require, d5 did require seeing this sort of, you know, offbeat queen route to h6. I'm a little bit sweaty. It's really hot out here. Nevertheless, let's continue. But I decided to go with d6, and now the game kind of shifted towards my opponent, slowly but surely, to his favor. After knight f3, again, queen h6 was the best move, apparently, sort of keeping the queen, you know, out there, ready to maybe, you know, try to get some harassment here on g2. And again, I think black is completely fine. But after knight f3, queen f3, and h5, apparently white is already much better here, which I completely failed to realize during the game that I was in a lot of trouble already. Computer already gives like a +1 advantage for white in this position, which, I mean, it surprised me quite a bit. Basically, I don't really have any sort of plans in this position, unfortunately, and I mean, I can finish my development. So does my opponent. You know, he reroutes his bishop to e3, rook c8, let's say king d2, you know, bishop d8, a5, very important move, you know, not to allow the bishop to develop to a5, and also fixing my pawns on the queen side. One pawn fixes two, that's usually a good deal. And after knight e7, my opponent could already maybe think about queen e2, and potentially some f4 ideas, and just, you know, start to harass again this overextended queen. The rook could come, you know, potentially to the g file if I decide to take on g3. My king is kind of stuck in the center, and the position is really really one-sided here. I think black has to be very, very precise to survive. That did not happen, fortunately. My opponent decided to go with bishop d5, which, I mean, makes sense as well, right? He more or less forces the trade of the light square bishops under the terms where he keeps the d5 square, knight to b8. My opponent decides to go for rook a4. I think there was other options. I think b4 was a pretty strong move here. Sort of, you know, trying to open up the queen side again and play against these fixed pawns. I think it made a lot of sense, but he decided to go for something a little bit more restrained with rook a4, knight c6, rook ha1, queen e6, h4, g6. And my position, I think, has improved quite a bit. At least according, I mean, I felt like my position has improved a little bit, and also computer agrees as well, where white's advantage is dwindling away with each passing move. And after c3, I castled finally, and bishop h6, rook e8, and bishop e3 is basically a silent draw of her. My opponent, you know, is trying to repeat moves. I kind of weighed my options. I thought, you know, I think I was maybe 10 minutes up on the clock at this point. Higher rated, you know, so I decided to keep the game going with king g7, king c2, rook f8, preparing f5, king b2, and finally get the 5 in. My opponent retreats with queen g2. He could have captured maybe on f5, but I have options here. I can probably take with the queen, which is the most natural. Sort of, you know, start to harass this pawn, and now his control of the d5 square has also significantly decreased, and I could potentially, if I get the knight to leave this outpost, I could potentially maybe, start expanding in the center myself. So queen g2 makes definitely a lot of sense. Knight e7, again challenging the knight. Knight e7, bishop e7. And here I was kind of already semi-optimistic. I thought, okay, I'm threatening f4 potentially, to sort of continue the expansion. And yeah, I thought my position was completely stabilized, and I thought already black was slightly preferred, maybe not better, but preferred. And here my opponent finds a very strong move, which is f4, and he couples the strong move with the draw offer. Now, it was kind of weird because I thought I was doing fine, but after f4, my kind of evaluation shifted a little bit, so I wasn't sure if I should continue the game or not. We'll see what happens. I decided to continue the game, obviously, because I felt like I'm still the higher-rated player. I should have chances in time trouble. I was still, I think, up on the clock after he played f4. But this position was actually much more difficult to play than I realized. And I kind of started misplaying it very, very quickly. I think the computer suggested rook b8, which now that I see it makes a ton of sense. The most logical move, like opposite sides, basically kings. You want to start opening up files and, start harassing the enemy king. And basically, yeah, the idea is you also protect the pawn from the queen, but also, try to play for b5 and try to create a target on b3. And I think the position is still fairly level. Unfortunately, I decided to take on e4, and after rook e4, white is already, again, somewhat better. And it was just kind of tough to find moves for me somehow all of a sudden. And we were both getting low on time, like 15 minutes or less. And his moves are easier to make than mine. And rook f5, bishop d2, queen d5, another sort of step in the wrong direction. I allow him to, for free, sort of improve his king, where it's no longer in this diagonal, which can potentially open, and also, defends this pawn and defends the bishop if the f file were ever to open. So queen d5 was also just a very bad move, step in the way wrong direction. I decided to retreat after, again, spending a lot of time. Now I'm maybe down to 6 minutes. My opponent still has the 15 minutes. So my position has decreased. I got low on time. I guess I should have taken the draw offer, but we came to play chess. There'll be time for draws in the future. Rook a1, again, very natural move, very hard to go wrong with such a move. Bishop f6 takes bishop f4. Trying to get rid of the bishop to get the rooks to the 7th rank. I decided to defend the 7th rank. I think I was down to 2 minutes at this time already. And we got into a heavy piece endgame where I am basically worse with no counterplay. And I'm also down on time, and I couldn't have taken a draw offer, just like everything sort of falling apart all of a sudden. My opponent obviously sees the one-move threat, queen f6, queen g1, king h7, queen g2. I think he's shuffling because he's just trying to get me maybe a bit lower on time, maybe trying to force some unforced error, basically. I don't think he was repeating the moves at this position anymore. But obviously we'll never know because I didn't offer a draw. Rook d7, rook 4e3, again just consolidating, queen d6, and finally opening up on the king's side. Like I said, it was completely natural for me to go for rook b8 in like 10 moves earlier to sort of try to play against my opponent's king. My opponent finally decides that it's time to play against my king again. No counterplay, just have to, pray for survival. And here I do find the saving grace, but I immediately bungle it afterwards. So c4 is the best move here. It basically liquidates into more or less a drawn rook endgame, because he can't really take with dc4 because of obviously queen d1, and his king is basically toast. bc4 would lead to queen a3. I come in from this side, and my rook didn't still come from f1. and he's kind of getting kebabbed out there as well. So he has to go for queen c4, and here I do have a drawing resource, which I mean, of course, I saw, but I didn't see a follow-up. So queen e3 is the move here. Again, just kind of infiltrating and going in for against the king. But I couldn't see a continuation after b4, but apparently here I could just play rook f1. And after rook e1, I think rook df7 was good enough to sort of create enough threats against the enemy king to create a balanced and level position. A little bit tough to see with about a minute on the clock, but definitely findable. I kind of feel a little bit disappointed that I didn't find this resource because after c4, queen c4, queen a3, there's one more thing that my opponent can do, which is computer's top recommendation, which is queen a4, but I could just take on a4, and after rook d5, we get into a double rook endgame, where I will collect the a5 pawn most likely. At some point, I'll probably collect the h4 pawn. Maybe I'll activate my king. It should be draw with perfect play. So this was definitely the best and last chance that I got in this game, because after rook c7, unfortunately, my opponent has only one move that wins, but it does win, which is queen a4, again, to eliminate the infiltration ideas on a3. And basically, from this point onwards, I'm just a pawn down with no counterplay, no compensation, and the game more or less ends as it should. I do blunder a tactic as well, because I made this move with maybe 3 seconds left on the clock, and after rook e5, I mean, I could resign immediately, but I, kept the game going for another 10 moves for no real reason, but, nothing really was in doubt at this point. The connected passers in the center, are more than sufficient to win the game, and after rook e6, I also lose the rook. So tough round 2, losing against a low-rated player. But you know what? I decided to fight on, to keep the game going, and sometimes you get rewarded for it, and sometimes you get punished for it. So you live by the sword, you die by the sword, as they say. So that was round 2. I'll upload the round 3 recap probably tomorrow in the morning. I'm on 1 and out 2, and we'll see how round 3 turns out. I'll see you later.